Kirby Smart on NIL. We've heard him discuss this a little bit. At times, it's us against the world or whatever. He did that against TCU too. I just think a freshman. I just don't think a freshman should make more than a senior, and I want other sports to survive. We're likely a year or two from schools cutting programs. If you're an incoming freshman and you're a stud and you're a backup right tackle as a senior, that's the first example. I get what he's trying to say here, and then the other sports, we'll get to that too because that's huge. But I don't think that's possible to say that a freshman cannot make as much as a senior.
Well, no, it's not possible. It's not legal to say that, but that's if how he wants to run his program, that's what he would prefer. I think he's speaking about what he would prefer as opposed to what's actually going on. And so, yeah, I don't think he wants to deal with the mess of a young guy rolling in, making $3-4 million, and your senior who's been there every spring for the last 4 years and has been all SEC or whatever. Like, that dude's still going to get his money, but is he making as much as like the 5-star quarterback that's the chosen one? Like Nico Iamaleava was clearly making a lot more money rolling into Tennessee than probably a lot of the guys who had already been all SEC or all whatever, maybe even all American in some cases. So, yeah, I don't think any coach wants that because it can create locker room problems. So I think you got to keep in mind when somebody like Kirby Smart's talking about this, he's talking about it from the point of view of a head coach, not necessarily the point of view of what's best for the player or that player's family or past players, etc. So, yeah, I think that's the belief to have the best kept together locker room. But how realistic is it in this day and age? I guess in Athens, they can make it as realistic as they want it to be. But in other places, clearly that's not always the case.
I mean, I would need to talk to an AD off the record to find out. Because here's the thing. He says he doesn't want other sports to he wants other sports to survive.
Well, let's look at the second part of this.
That's the second part.
Well, let's
okay, you want to say the freshman or senior thing? You want to solve that? Get behind collective bargaining, you loudmouth jackass. So don't give me that.
There goes the Georgia fans we had.
Yeah, I mean, like, hey, we gotta do this. We're gonna make a rule. Like,
is that Kirby Smart's decision?
Are you going to support it? Or are you going to sit here and try to go back? So my question to him is, if he truly wants this, support collective bargaining.
How do you know he doesn't?
Well, I don't know. He's never said it, but come out and say, like, I don't know about this. And like, don't talk in platitudes. Talk in, I support collective bargaining as a coach.
No, I don't know if he's ever said it. Probably, I don't know if he's been asked it. I get your point, but he's not going to make that decision. But him saying something can help.
He's got to everybody asked him his opinion on it. If he and other coaches get behind it, it will help.
I Googled Kirby Smart CBA, and I mean, this is AI. AI is not always accurate. Please understand that, especially on Google. Google searches, it's wrong all the time. Garrett,
I was going to say, if you put minus AI when you Google, it'll take away the AI.
Oh, will it? Okay, yes, I didn't know that because it pops up and it's not what I wanted to pop. But the first headline that pops up if you Google Kirby Smart CBA, Georgia makes Kirby Smart college football's first $13 million man. Kirby Smart contract details on record $130 million deal.
Right.
So it does.
People have brought that up for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it does kind of ring hollow when he's also making gobs of money.
So
I don't think he should make as much as a guy who's older than him and coaching has been coaching longer.
Wow.
How's that?
That's
Is that the same thing?
Yeah. So like he should make as much as Kyle Whittingham. Or Kyle Whittingham should be making more. Like based on his, I mean, granted, they're not the same thing, but that's his logic. And what I will say to the other part is, I don't know what the operating budget for, say, a tennis team is for a year.
Well, yeah, let's talk about this. That's a separate part.
So if you don't want to lose other programs, are you going to voluntarily, like, just say the operating budget is $3 million for the men's and women's tennis team at Georgia? I don't know what it would be, but it's $3 million. Are you going to say, like, I'll give up $3 million to save tennis? Are you going to do that, Kirby?
No, either he or will he give up $3 to $5 million from his football program.
His staff. Yeah. Like, will you give up that money from the football program? Well, $13 million of it goes straight to him. So he's, maybe not the largest part of the operating budget, but he and the staff, are more than half of it. So,
I mean, it does feel kind of like a politician who's complaining about the poor people and their taxes and all that. And meanwhile, they're, you find out they're making like hundreds of millions off of, their dealings and all of that. I mean, it's kind of, it has a political sort of feel to it of like, yeah, you're saying what the people want to hear. And then meanwhile, you're rich as all get out. So I can see where people kind of get twisted on him in particular, or a Nick Saban or someone along those lines trying to advocate and shake the trees of like, oh, the sport's dying. There's not enough money to go around. It's like, well, you got. You got a whole money tree that you're shaking right there. But as far as the schools cutting programs, I do think that this has been kind of the boogeyman that's been said for multiple years now. And I know that there's been some schools that have had to make cuts, but they are very small schools, and we've never talked about them unless we were talking about the fact that they were not cutting sports. Mm-hmm. Like, and I can't even remember the names. I know there's like 2 examples we've had over the last year. We're like, did you know that Dubuque State's cutting their women's tennis? And we're like, oh my God, they're cutting the whole sport's dying because NIL. It's like, did you even know that school existed? Mm-hmm. I mean, it sucks. It sucks there's less opportunities, but I do think that whole cutting programs thing is something that the coaches go to every time they want to do like the boogeyman thing of, well, look at what's happening. These sports are going to die. And maybe that is eventually what's going to happen. And I do think that's something that the leaders have to keep in mind. And I do think that's something to be concerned about. But yeah, it probably gets lost, the messaging, when it's coming from someone like him, who is not in any danger whatsoever, but is clamoring about the danger. You know,
I have to follow up with your tennis thing.
Yeah.
You want to know this?
Yeah,
you want facts? Okay, this is good. You said about $3 million, right? Yeah. Men's tennis at Georgia, net loss of $1.3 million, 10 team members. They brought in $95,000 in revenue. All right. But net loss of $1.3 million. Women brought in $80,000 in revenue, but a net loss of nearly $5 million, so about $3 million.
So about $3 million of operating costs.
I just had to look that up.
So, all right. I mean, like I just gave him a $3 million pay cut, and he's still making $10 million. So I'm sorry about the expansion to his ski chalet, but like that's the thing. It reminds me of Joe Manchin, who was a senator from West Virginia, like on the back of his yacht doing a press conference, being like, "Hey, we got to help the little guy." And you're like,
yeah, there is that feel to it, but I would also say like he earned that money.
He did.
You know, so it's not his job to save softball.
No,
you know?
and it's absolutely
because you make money, does that mean you shouldn't complain about others who aren't, or how to fix the game?
Well, if you here's the thing: if you are, and he's earned that money, that's true. But if you are wanting to help the problem and excluding yourself from part of the budget, that's where the problem is. Like, if he's like, they have to do everything else but come to me, like, if you are saying that everybody needs to make sacrifices, athletes are going to have to make sacrifices when freshmen don't get much as seniors. See, that's where the rich guy, you have to make sacrifices thing hits a wall is, okay, so you're asking me, who makes less money than you, to make a sacrifice. Okay, but you're not going to do it?
But the sport he coaches, it brings in all of the revenue to pay for the ones who don't.
Okay, and I'm just talking about his own football team with his logic there.
Well, that's what I just mentioned.
So, yeah, but like his own football team, like when he's talking about that, or his whole athletic department, yes, but when you start telling people to sacrifice and you start at the bottom, that to me is where it's – and then you say, like, he doesn't want to lose these other sports, and he does bring in all the money. Like, he's running in, like, you know, he's kind of colliding in a situation where he's part of the reason that, you know, like there's so much money spent on football.
Well, he's part of the reason they have the money to spend.
Too.
He's the biggest reason. But if he was really that concerned, because we don't need to go on and on about this. If he really is that concerned, he could go give some of his money, but he shouldn't have to do that. And if that's the only solution, then maybe it's not meant to survive if you have to suddenly start doing things like that. But it is one of those where we will see if sports start getting cut. I mean, beyond a level of D3 table tennis or something like that. Not trying to be disrespectful. It's just that we've not seen that sort of seismic happening the way that it's sort of been put out there like this. And so maybe we are closer to that. And then when that that hammer finally drops, then we'll all go, oh crap, everybody who said that was right. But I think everybody's hoping we don't quite get to that point.
Let's get to that point before we sound the alarm.
Yeah.
And then go, oh, this is bad. Like, yeah, there are solutions to all this, and collective bargaining can help save all the sports. So you need to advocate for the thing that's going to help you the most.
Who loses with collective bargaining?
Here's the thing about it. Everybody kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point,
Yep.
is that everybody wins and everybody loses.
Yep.
We are in a tug of war right now, and this doesn't need to be tug of war, because tug of war, it never comes to it. Like, in a tug of war, like you've played tug of war before, in the middle, nobody goes like, hey guys, we've been pulling for a long time. Let's just stop. That's not really what happens. One team falls over and wins, and the other one, falls backwards and wins, and the other one falls forward and loses.
One just collapses.
So
and
exactly.
dies, yeah.
So instead of tug of war, which only one side can win, you do collective bargaining, which is a win-win for everybody. And it's a lose-lose for everybody at the same time, because you have to make sacrifices.
Other things come into play.
But when you start at the top, let me just finish my point, and telling people that they have to make sacrifices, and you are asking the people at the bottom to make sacrifices first, that's hard for them to accept and do.
I don't know if they're using a freshman as saying that they're at the bottom. I think that what they're saying is that if you've been in the sport as a senior for 4 years, what he's saying that they should not make less than freshmen. I completely 100% disagree. It's a supply and demand, just like it is as you as a football coach.
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith deserves as a freshman to make more money than a lot of seniors. Yep. I don't care how long they've been playing at Ohio State.
Yep, I agree. All right, so Ross Dellinger, I didn't know if you guys had mentioned this on Wednesday. This is an interesting note. In a meeting with Deloitte officials, which has been the big, storyline this week on whatever eventually happens with the House settlement, ACC spring meetings, they shared with ADs and coaches that 70% of the past deals from booster collectives would have been denied. 90% of deals from public companies would have been approved. So, again, this is me. The 90% would be what? Pepsi, Whataburger, car dealerships, whatever else. The 70% of past deals from booster collectives would have been what? Mainly donors and what?
So the way that I looked at this was I saw Darren Heitner, who I know you've talked to. He's always pro-athlete, no matter what. I don't feel like I've ever seen him not take the athlete side in any of these stories. Is there an example?
I think Nico Iamaleava was one.
But you kind of have to in that case because he
but that was the only one I've seen. Yeah.
Screwing up the whole system. But he's pretty much 99.9% pro-athlete, and his immediate reaction was like, well, they're trying to take away the NIL deals and this and that, and like, I'm pro-athlete as well, but it's not like they just get carte blanche on everything. I think the way that I read this, and I am not legal eagle, my brain turns to mush when we talk about these topics for too long, but I think that they wouldn't be approved because they weren't on the up and up. Like, they were the deals that weren't like Pepsi going, here is $1 million to Caitlin Clark. And here's why. They were more like, here's the Lambo dealership in Austin who's kind of like behind the scene. You know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of thing. That's how I read it, at least, was like, yeah, they would have been denied because they're not true NIL. That's how I read it, at least. And maybe I'm wrong on that.
But there is a very simple way to solve that issue legally. And here's the other thing that they're going to run into, because they will get sued over that part of it if 70% of the deals are going to be denied. As long as I am a reputable business owner who pays taxes in America, and say Emery Winter is my star point guard recruit, and
that dude never be a star. He's a bum.
But he's my star point guard recruit, and I decide that, you know what, at Paul Catalina Lamborghini, we are going to give Emery a car, and we're going to pay him $500,000 to be our spokesman for a day. That's all I have to do.
Like, that is the way it is now. No question.
You can't tell me that I can't now. All you're asking these businesses that would not get cleared to do is make them do something for that money, which is really not hard, because if you just show up and say, like, I need 3 Instagram posts, a TikTok dance, and you in this Lamborghini at the place signing autographs for an hour, here's your money. I would think that of that 70%, about 95% of them would get fulfilled in 6 seconds. Yeah. And then you'd have the, lazy ne'er-do-well athletes who, walk out on contracts and do those things.
And Mitt Winter had a couple of things last night and also tonight about Tennessee has passed a very NIL-friendly law for the athletes in Tennessee. So that's another thing that they're battling. You were going to say something else, Craig?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's more to it than they just aren't more deals that are on the up and up, and more of kind of still the trying to do things the older way and get around the parameters that were put in place. And as the story that you just mentioned is kind of falling in line with that line of thought, the thing that holds back college sports and trying to progress and do a lot of things is, I think, what Cody Campbell and Nick Saban and that committee is. At least it's a topic that's been brought up, or Campbell's brought up in the past, and it's the fact that as all of the problems continue to mount, one of the biggest ones is that everybody is still selfish. Everybody is still doing what they have to do for themselves, and that includes the states. And so what happened with all the southeastern states, all those SEC schools, when everybody started doing all these NIL changes, everybody started trying to buffer or change their state laws to help who? Their in-state schools, which, hey, that's what you would want them to do as constituents. But what did it do? It created different laws everywhere, and some have them and some don't. And so some can do this and some don't. And that's why one of the biggest issues that has to get fixed is everybody's got to be under the same damn law. Mm-hmm. Like, that's one of the biggest problems. That would clean up a lot of this. Well, so I know that's more of the Tennessee story.
Yeah. Let me what Mitt Winter said about Tennessee.
Yeah.
Thought I'd give this a repost since it's significant. In a nutshell, Tennessee schools and athletes won't have to adhere to the House settlement limits and restrictions on paying, receiving NIL compensation under the terms of this new law. Tennessee now has the most athlete-friendly NIL law, appears to prohibit all of the House settlements limits on NIL comp, which is salary cap, the 20, whatever you want to say, collective restrictions, unless they're a part of a federal law, valid court order, or determined to be exempt from antitrust law.
God, we've got to get all the lawyer stuff out of this freaking game, man, for one. Like, it's just been so, I mean, I don't know if it ever will, though, because of where we are now, where this is going to be like the constant battle. But yeah, hey, everybody should all agree and everything would be easier. Josh Heupel probably feels that way. But guess who's not trying to do that? The state that he works in. They're still trying to get their advantages and have a better advantage in NIL capabilities than the state of Alabama does or the state of Georgia does, right? And so that's why in the future, whatever changes do occur, collective bargaining, like one of the things that has to be hammered out, and I know is at least on the Cody Campbell list of ideas, is everybody's got to be on the same page, state by state, or else this is just going to continue to be the case where, just like in college sports of years past, it wasn't the states, it's the school themselves. They're all going to cheat. They're all going to try to find advantages where they can to win. And so that's no different than state laws and trying to massage those to best help your school win more football games. And so until you can get everybody where they're playing by the same book of rules, then everybody's going to continue to tweak here and there, and it's just going to continue to be sort of messy. So, yeah, I mean, state of Tennessee is doing what's best for itself, I suppose, but those state laws being different depending on where you are is certainly part of the messier side of this whole thing.